Hey guys, it's Lauren, and I had made a video and I was thinking, something that I do that I don't think I've ever talked about is runes. I read runes in at least as frequently as I read tarot. I rely on them more heavily in a lot of ways, and it occurred to me, it's sort of been occurring to me. Rather, I've been able to articulate something that I think I've always known on some sort of level. My relationship with runes and my relationship with tarot they're both extremely different kinds of relationships. For those of you who have checked out Tarot Skeptic, or I've talked to personally about tarot stuff, you know that I tend towards kind of this somewhat, like, often off-putting kind of hyper-intellectualism. I'm skeptical, and for me, tarot is all about, esoteric history and context, and we have to think about these things within particular sorts of historical spaces and blah, blah, blah. But runes for me is just like woo as shit. Like, runes is magical. Rune reading is magical for me in a way that runes is magical in a way that tarot for me isn't. I know for a lot of people, and I think most of the people I interact with online, tarot is very closely tied to their spiritual practices. They feel like they can communicate with their gods or with particular kinds of spirits who are important to them, or they get in touch with particular aspects of their psyche that's really powerful, or whatever sort of language people use. And for me, that's not my relationship with tarot at all. Tarot for me is very much about my intellect. And I've just sort of realized in more of a sort of verbal way that runes is very different. Runes for me are magical, and I think they're very closely tied to a particular set of gods and particular gods within that group of gods. And I've been wrestling for at least the last year, a little bit longer, about whether or not one can be an effective rune reader and rune user magically without having particular kinds of relationships, at least on some level, with these gods in this sort of cultural context. And this video is not an answer to that question, because I don't think that that's really my business as far as what other people are doing. But I'm pointing out kind of this realization that I had, and just sort of like the funniness of the situation, as far as tarot for me is not particularly magical. It certainly can be, but for me it's not. I don't use tarot hardly ever for things like ritual or meditation or spell work or whatever, and when I do readings with tarot, it's very grounded in this acquired body of skills, and history and esoteric context, and all those things are important. But runes is where I get, that's where my intuition is engaged, and that's where I feel like I'm actually communicating with gods and the world on this magical level. And I take rune reading very seriously. I never, tarot cards, I'll toss out a card just to see what happens, or I'll pull one and just, I'll meditate it on it or whatever, like just kind of in a superficial sort of way. Just tarot for me can be fun. Runes to me have always been like hyper serious. I won't do a reading for somebody just for play, for example. I take it really seriously, and it's because for me it's about a connection to a particular pantheon and a particular way of looking at the world. So this video, now that I've rambled at you for 4.5 minutes, I was going to show you my rune sets, which you would think, oh well, it's just straight lines scrawled on various kinds of materials. How interesting can it be? And the answer is very interesting. In fact, I didn't even bring my weirdest set out, which makes me sad, but oh well. So the main set that I read with when I do like fairs or when I'm reading for other people is this gigantic set of runes. They're huge. I've seen one set that has been bigger, but these are pretty big. My friend Scott has a set that's quite a bit larger, and he actually made a set out of like those ceramic tiles that you get for like doing your patio. So that might be the biggest rune set in the world, but it's not very practical. So this is the set that I use when I read, and I like them because they're big. They're, you know, it's a tactile thing. It's really good for people who can't see very well, which often happens in low lighting at psychic fairs or whatever. So there's this. My very first set I made myself when I was in college, and I was attending... I eventually became an officer, I think. If I wasn't an officer, then I had somehow just sort of inserted myself into the group of officers. Our pagan student union or whatever, we had one night where we all made rune sets, and I had collected stones from College Creek in Williamsburg, Virginia, and made this set, and it's just red paint. And it does the trick. They're definitely not my favorite set, but at the time, you know, they did the job. And this was really before I had any kind of, like serious interest in runes. It took a long time. Actually, I would say it was only in the last couple of years really, that it's been something I've taken seriously. Let's see. This set is really interesting. I bought this set 2 years ago at Free Spirit Gathering in Darlington, Maryland. Anyway, they were made by a glass artist, and you're not going to be able to see real well, but it's actually blue, glittery. There we go. It's some glitter. It's a very unusual sort of set. I haven't seen others like it. But they're particularly nice. This one I mostly use at home. I don't read for others with this set. Let's see. This is a set that I carried in my purse for ages, and it's just those little discs that you can get at the craft store. They're no big deal. I took a wood burner and I made my own set just so that I could have something inexpensive, toss it in the bag, and always have a set of runes with me, which is something that I really like. Which is not to say that I use them all the time, because I don't, but there's something about just having them that is comforting. So I very frequently have a set. I made these last year at the same festival at Free Spirit, in a workshop. My same friend who made the giant like terracotta runes also does an intro rune series during Free Spirit, and I've taken it like a half dozen times. But I always take it just because it's a lot of fun. He's really insightful, and you sit around for a while making runes for like an hour and a half and talking to other people who are obsessive about runes and Norse things, etc., etc. And I always learn a whole lot, even though I've done it a half dozen times. This set I actually just acquired, and I'm super pumped. This is... they're made out of lilac. The tag said that it was 100-year-old lilac wood, and they're really beautiful. And a friend of mine just opened a shop in Huntersville, North Carolina, which I didn't even know was a town until recently, because Huntersville is outside of Charlotte, and in my mind, everything outside of Charlotte is just Charlotte kind of extended. So I admit to not being very attentive as far as what is going on around my city. Anyway, her shop is Laughing Brook is the name, and I think there will be a website up soon, but I'll put a link if I can find something. So if you happen to be in the Charlotte area and you're like, where can I blow my money on witch stuff? That is where you can do it, my friend. Let me tell you. So I'm really excited about these. I just got them. They're beautiful, and I will put them to good use. So, runes. Hooray! I use them as a divination tool. I use them magically. They're always a big part of spell work that I do. My name Thorn is actually taken from the rune Thorsaz, for a lot of really complicated reasons that I don't want to talk about, but that's they're really important to me, clearly. So runes, yes. I don't know, I kind of wanted to make a video because I was just sort of struck and amused by the difference between my relationship with runes versus tarot. Yeah, so, and I'd be curious, for those of you who are tarot people, because I think most of you guys are tarot people, or at least the divination people who are divination people are tarot people. If you have other tools that you use, if your approach is comparable, or if you have really different relationships with your different systems, I think that would be interesting to hear about. So I hope everyone is well, and I don't see Oliver, but he hopes you're well too, insofar as a cat is capable of hope. So